just working away, watching a lot of stuff. Was on the Vampire Videos podcast, gave the site and the pod a wee shout out, and that was good. Yeah. We didn't really have much nice things to say about the film, right enough, but it's nice to chat to the guys again. So I seem to have had a row of duffers on there with them. I seem to get all the bad films.
What was the film?
Daywatch.
Oh, of course. So, you'd said before. Yeah,
the quality dip is quite significant between the first one and the second one. And I do think, to a certain extent, you probably need to know quite a bit about Russian folklore in order for this film to make sense. And I did Slavonic studies at uni. I did comparative literature. We read loads of Russian at uni. But even I was like, I'm not following this at all. So, and I understand that not everything's made for a Western audience. I'm not that sort of indignant about it, but I just, there was a whole chunk to that film where I missed out on probably quite important plot points.
Yeah, that kind of was made for an international audience because they were obviously off the back of the first one being relatively successful.
A huge success. Yeah.
So that might have been the reason why they didn't get a third.
Yes, well, seemingly the guys were saying yesterday there's 8 books, which I didn't realise. I thought there was just the 3 that were going to be adapted. And they were saying yesterday they're surprised, given the way things are with like streamers and stuff like this, that nobody has picked it up for an English language remake as yet. But I do wonder if that's because it seems so embedded in quite traditional Russian stories. And I wonder if maybe that's the reason it would probably have to change quite significantly. But it was such a hit, so you do wonder why it hasn't been picked up.
Yeah. Strange. It may be the rights owners as well. It could be lots of stuff to do with that, whether they're actually willing to allow another version of this to be made, and usually it's down to money as well. I mean, look at the Lord of the Rings stuff and all that, how much that cost. That was what, $750 million to get that in place before they would actually allow a TV show to be made, and then they just turned around and sold the rights to the films right at the back of that again, basically a big sort of 2 fingers up to Amazon, which is it's not great business, but
it does make you wonder though about, because I think there's quite a lot of books that I've read that I think they would be really great. They feel very cinematic. That would be a great adaptation, either as a TV series or as a, because TV series obviously the quality of them are really, really high, or as a film. And you do wonder sometimes, is it because of things like that where you can have like what happened to Amazon, essentially the rug taken out from under you when you've paid. I mean, I don't even know how many zeros is in that sum that Amazon has paid, and yet it almost kind of means nothing because they've lost the rights to the film. So it's bizarre.
Yeah, it's a bit strange, to be honest. Books lend themselves more to TV series than they do to films, I think, because especially if it's a series of books, then you can usually do one book in a season quite reasonably. You may lose some of the content. Obviously, if you're talking about a 300-400 page book, then you're going to lose something out, because it's usually a minute of screen time is a page in a screenplay. Roughly, it can obviously vary wildly, but that's the kind of average. So you're looking at, for a 60-minute TV show over 10 episodes, that's 3 hours. That's 300 pages. Maybe, you could count, it just depends. And the way some TV shows adapt things is they take things from different books in a series rather than just following them totally sort of religiously, as in this is book 1, book 2, book 3, because the Three Body Problem has done that. I think they've got a second season for 3 books, but what they did was they dipped in and out of the 3 books for various parts of it and completely changed some other elements of it, because in the book story there's just 2 main characters, whereas in the TV version there are 5 characters that represent 1 character, and also there's another 2 where one of them's a major character and one of them's a sort of more of a supporting actor, but they brought all these together, made it more visual, if you like. So there's different people doing different things in it and all that. So I can understand that. But they've taken bits from all over the place and they've slotted it in differently and changed the timeline a wee bit and all this sort of stuff. So yeah, there are ways to do it. And you've got examples like Slow Horses, for instance, which is
Oh,
one
is that a book
season.
as well?
Yeah, that's the series.
Oh, very good.
It's like there's about 8 or 9 books. I think it's Mick Herron
Oh,
that did
right,
them,
okay.
and the way they're doing it is one season, one book, 6 episodes,
Mhm,
and it works really, really well. Now I haven't read. I think I've read the first book, and there are obvious differences, but they've got the tone of it really right, and
mhm.
it works really, really well. Whereas if you're trying to do that as a film, you're talking about 6 hours of content compared with 2 hours of content. So what do you cut out?
Yeah, what do you cut?
Well, you kind
I
of saw
think
that with
that's
Tinker Tailor Soldier Spy as well. The TV series of that was 4 hours or so, but the film was only 2. So
yeah.
what do you cut out? What do you bring in? What do you
And yet
amalgamate?
I still feel that's a film that contains a lot. I think that's a really wordy, there's a lot going on in that film, and
Mhm,
yet you're right, it's half the length of the TV series. Do you know, it's funny because I think for me, and I know we joked in the group chat about Sammy had watched The Snowman, which obviously is a bad Joe
mhm.
Nesbo adaptation, but I'm really glad that they're actually now making this into a TV series with Tobias Santelman and Joel Kinnaman, and I'm really excited to see how that goes, because hopefully that'll start at the beginning with the Bat, and you'll
Mhm.
get one series, one book, or maybe even one series, 2 books. I don't know, because the books obviously do just follow on from each other. But I'm
Yep.
really glad that that's actually getting a television adaptation, because I think that's what it's always needed, and not a cinematic adaptation, because it's just too much. So that hopefully will be a good example. She says, fingers crossed. I'll watch it. I'm like, I hate it. I hate it.
No, you're right. I think it does serve it better on the TV show, because there was all sorts of problems with that film, wasn't it, during production, as well
Yeah,
as it not being particularly good. But yes,
yes.
it didn't come out very well. I did watch it, and I wasn't impressed by it at all. Not to the point where I totally hated it and dismissed it or anything, but I just thought, is that yeah,
I
not
just never
much to it.
understood why they started with that story. And I just remember the campaign for it, and it was like the wee smiley face and the wee snowman, and
Yeah.
it made it of blood, and it was like Mr. Policeman. It was just so bad. And it just, I think it's when it's a book series that you love as well, and obviously people feel that way about Lord of the Rings, for example, or Harry Potter. When you feel that
Yep.
passionately about something and you see it butchered, essentially, it does kind of a bit of a sting in the tail to actually watch it. And it's characters that you've pictured in your head, and they don't quite look the way you imagined them, and things like that. That I'm a big sort of, that's not how it is in the book kind of person, and I know that officially makes me an arsehole, but
No, well,
it's really hard to.
no, you get a picture, especially of, say, the main character in a book,
Yeah.
because you build a picture in your mind of, based on the description, but based on your own experiences
Mhm.
of certain characters and how they look. Now, I could say that with John Rebus, for instance, because I've read so many
Yes.
of his books, and I've got a really clear idea of what he looks like. And every adaptation has been completely different that they've done of it, and none of them match what I think.
Uh-huh.
But it's only what I think. I just have to kind of come to terms with that. But a lot of people are like that, and there is a sort of a ground swelling among sort of diehard fans saying, this isn't my version of the character,
Mhm.
not hashtag not my whatever.
Well,
You
sure,
know.
James Bond, Daniel Craig, because he was blonde. That was
Oh,
such a
that was
huge
great. Yeah, I remember. Yeah,
departure from the
yeah,
books.
yeah.
So
As if
yes, I think.
just because Daniel Craig was blonde. I mean, nobody
Uh-huh.
actually said at the time. You do know hair dyes are available in case they're actually going a different way. This is what he looks like in real life. He's a person.
Yes.
Yeah.
Uh-huh. Uh-huh.
Aye.
Wigs exist. Just for men exists. All these options.
Yeah, and I don't get. I can understand people want the best product, and it's
Mhm.
as close to what they
Have
imagine as
imagined. Yeah.
possible,
Yeah.
but they don't even give things a chance. This
No.
criticism comes in when things are announced, not even when
Mhm.
they've seen even the first trailer for it or anything, nothing like that. So you've got to wonder. It seems to be sort of professional complainers. It's the same idea as the people who
It is.
have got the email for the BBC, so they can actually just
Points
contact
of
them right
view.
away. Yeah, yeah. No, that's what it's like, because I've said that for years, even before the whole sort of internet age. There were people who had the BBC on speed dial on their phone so that they could complain
I
about
don't
something,
like it.
because you would get something of a controversial programme had been on,
Mhm.
like Jerry Springer, the opera, for instance.
Mhm.
And in the papers the next day, there would be an article about it saying 400 people complained about it overnight. And you're saying, how the fuck did 400 people complain about it? And it was because they had the number on speed dial, so they could phone up and say, this is an outrage. I am outraged. And say, right, very good, Mrs. Smith. Good to hear from you again. You know, right, we'll mark that down for you. You know?
See you next Wednesday when you phone in for this. But then it's like, sometimes the newspapers, though, because I remember, who were that dance group? Diversity. Remember they did a Black Lives Matter dance, or was it Britain's Got Talent or something? And I remember the newspapers the next day had this big thing. It was like, saying it was a disgrace and all that. And the number of complaints on the night itself, say it was like 500, but the number of complaints after the press had made such a big deal. It went up to like something like 30,000, and it's like, but you haven't even seen it. You're just being told that you should be outraged about it, and you've phoned in.
Yep.
I feel like you should have to answer questions about, have you actually watched this thing before you complain about it, as opposed to just being outraged for the sake of it.
Yeah, well, that's professional outrage, or even promising amateur outrage is a thing. People complain. They complain all the time. That even when they get what they want, because if people complain and say, right, we're going to change that, and say, oh no, we didn't mean that. Don't change it to that. Or it's like the whole Bailey Gifford thing that's been going on in the press of it, and obviously it was fossil fuel books that said, they should. We demand that they divest from their investments in oil, gas, and also anything to do with Israel. So they were making a demand of a company that just deals with their customers' needs. So if a customer says, buy shares in this, they say, fine, we'll buy it. We'll take the profits from the transactions and stuff like that. So that's how they make their money, by managing it and taking a cut of whatever they get. So they weren't just going to have to divest, they were going to have to get rid of all these customers, which they are not going to do. So instead of even coming to the table to talk to fossil fuel books, because they knew that was going to be a non-starter, just says, that's fair enough, we'll just pick up our ball and go home, the game's a bogey, and just says, right, well, we're not going to be sponsoring any book festivals anymore. And that's just completely mental. It could mean the end of some of these wee book festivals in Britain because of their attitude towards that. And then, of course, when these people were challenged by saying, well, you're saying where's the other funding going to come from? And says, well, the government needs to step in. And somebody pointed out,
the government are cutting arts funding left, right and centre. There's absolutely no way.
No, it's not that. It means, I was thinking in terms of the government wouldn't meet their criteria because they own the golden shares in BAE, which are currently supplying arms all over the place. Yeah, in Saudi Arabia and all these sort of places. Plus, they were saying, you can't put any money into the likes of Meta, which is Facebook. Yes. You can't put any money into Nvidia, which produces like computer parts and things like that. And you can't put any money into Amazon because they support Israel. And again, it was pointed out, you're working on a computer. Amazon sell your fucking books. And you're posting this from Instagram, which is run by Facebook.
By Meta.
So what does that actually, are you going to withdraw from all of these? Are you going to ask your agents to make sure that your books don't get sold in Watersons, who are run by a hedge fund, or Amazon? And they're like, oh, well, that's not the point of it. It's not, it's more of a moral thing rather than a practical thing. So they were perfectly willing to let book festivals go to the wall, but they weren't willing to actually put their own money where their mouth is, which I found incredible. I understand the cause of it. I understand the fact that they're trying to make a difference and change public opinion, but they've kind of gone about it in the wrong way. They're going for the wrong targets. They're going for really soft targets. They're not going for the governments. They're not going for, directly to the big organizations. Because if they went to Amazon and said, right, I'm going to stop selling my books on your platform, Amazon would say, fair enough.
Okay. Yeah. I know, they wouldn't care. I think the thing is there's a lot of, from what I can see, certainly on social media, there's a lot of people sort of posturing, I guess, is the word I would use to say, don't go to Starbucks, don't do this, blah, 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 blah.
Mm-hmm.
And to be quite honest with you, there are certain companies who, when you like, so see like how some companies treated their staff during COVID. You're like, oh, I wouldn't book a holiday with Virgin because of what they did and stuff like that. And there's certainly some companies where, particularly with positions in, Russia or the Middle East, and you go, actually, do you know what? That makes me see that company in a different view. No, I probably won't use them again. But there's a lot of people that I think on social media are posturing a lot, and you kind of wonder how much they're practicing what they preach, or if it's just telling other people what to do. And I think that everyone has obviously the right to make their own decisions. And ultimately, for all they know, the people that, accidentally bought a tea in Starbucks once could be sending, aid through like Médecins Sans Frontières to Palestine or somewhere like that. And, but you're completely demonized because you bought a coffee once. I think that again, it comes down to this whole thing of there's just no nuance anymore. It's just, and that's on both left and right. It's just, you must do this and do not go there, and all this sort of thing. But I think there's so much of it is just posturing.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That doesn't, I mean, it's not making a difference. All that's happened now is that book festivals are going to really struggle over the next couple of years. And the ones that withdrew their own support from, they said to Baillie Gifford, no, we won't bring you anymore. They all said, well, we're doing this reluctantly because we fear for our staff, because there was going to be protests. Like events. That's what Edinburgh said. They had been threatened with. They said there was a statement made by Fossil Fuels Books saying, obviously, to get into the events, we would need to buy tickets, but we can make sure that the events are so disrupted that they won't actually start in the first place. We won't let people in and all that sort of stuff. So basically, disrupt at the start, which would obviously lead to some sort of confrontation. And the people who are working as volunteers and sort of seasonal staff at book festivals, they're not there to, handle crowds and handle confrontation. They're there to take tickets and let people in, and show people where the toilets
are.
I'm
not being funny, but the people that go to book festivals, it's going to be like we old dears. And so, do you know what I mean? They're not the problem. They're just there because, Maeve Binchy or someone's doing a reading of their book. I actually don't know if Maeve Binchy's still alive, but you know what I mean? That's kind of what's in my head of who goes to book festivals. It's not like it's, it's not all these people that run these big international conglomerates that are going to be there. You're sort of, again, it's kind of targeting the wrong people, isn't it?
Yeah, so it's really caused some real sort of division lines, especially with people who like going to book festivals and people who actually go to book festivals in order to try and sell books as well. That people, because that was part of it. They were saying that it was the likes of Charlotte Church and Nish Kumar they withdrew from attending these festivals. They're supposed to be giving talks at them, and because of that, other people were felt the pressure to not go as well. And some of them saying, well, this is part of my livelihood here. I go along to these things, talk for an hour and try and sell some books. It can make all the difference between, like sort of profit and loss on this book. And it also gives them a platform for their next book. So there's sort of name recognition against it as well. So it's not, they're
also, again, is that not just posturing? Because surely Charlotte Church and Nish Kumar, when they signed up to do this, must have known it was sponsored by Baillie Gifford. So again, this whole thing of like pulling out because, oh my God, I mean, you must have known. You surely didn't just sign up for something and didn't know the ins and outs of what you were signing up for, no?
Yeah, I know, yes. But it seems strange going after that company, but not going after like some of there's what Baillie Gifford's response was, and it was very sparse. They said, yes, a part of our portfolio is oil and gas, but it's 2% of our portfolio. Industry standards 11%. And that was basically saying, yeah, you're going after us, but what about all the rest of them? What about the ones that are really, like, totally all in this? Why are you not, trying to get to them? And the thing is, like, say with Baillie Gifford, it's not just books. There's so much that they sponsor. Obviously, that there is a certain amount of whitewashing going on with them doing all this sponsorship. It's good for their image to do that. I'm not denying that at all. But they are right across the sort of art spectrum. It's not just book festivals. So what's going to happen next? Are they going to target other things? I was on This is going to sound really wanky. I was on a live stream on Thursday for the launch of the new opera season, the
Oh, lovely, yeah.
24-25 opera season. And one of the questions that came from the audience on it was, what's your stance on Baillie Gifford? Because they sponsor opera as well. And the guy from Scottish Opera says,
right.
they have more than met our criteria in terms of, you know, how good or how bad they are. So all these organisations have this criteria.
Oh yeah, I mean, if you sign
enable...
up to sponsor something, yeah, there's, I mean, even like I know from experience from my own work, if we sign up to try and obviously supply staff to somebody, the questions that you have to answer now, it's like about environmental policies, DE&I policies, all this sort of thing. So that there usually is quite a thorough check, as it were, of whoever is coming on board. So if they're saying they're happy with them, then presumably they've done their own due diligence.
Yeah, but that won't stop
No.
the likes of somebody protesting and saying, you know, we've stopped them doing books, so therefore we'll stop them doing something else. And for a lot of these organisations, these corporate sponsors bring in an awful lot of money for it. It allows them to do a lot more, and it means they keep ticket prices down on us. But, you know, I suppose people are taking a stance as well. So it's really difficult.
Jesus Christ, watching the Canadian GP qualifier last night, I mean, every other sponsor is some sort of like Saudi Arabian oil company or whatever. So, I mean, it's funny because when you look at, I'm surprised it hasn't been targeted more as a sport. And I don't know if it's just because there's a lot of wealth around it, obviously due to who they affiliate with, but their sponsorship situation and the places that indeed they race in as well, where there's been questions over, you know, human rights and that sort of thing, and yet they've not really been targeted as everyone look at what Formula One are doing. Isn't that a disgrace?
Yeah, but it's always been the same with the likes of Formula One, because look at the tax issues of Bernie Ecclestone and all this sort of stuff. There's been so many things. And who was the guy that he was there with? It's not Max Hastings, it was another guy. And it was all about his Nazi sex romps.
Oh, Finlay Mosley's son.
Yes, Max Mosley. I think it was.
Max Mosley,
yeah.
Max
Mosley, he was involved in Formula One, wasn't he?
Yeah, he was, yeah.
Yeah, and it was all stuff like that.
He'd had swastika sex parties.
Yeah, if you're going to have a sex party, you may as well go all out. You're not going to do it quietly, you know. Let's have a theme.
I mean, is
the fact that it's a sex party not enough of a theme, you know?
That's what I was just thinking. Did somebody actually sit down and say, do you know what this sex party needs? A theme?
Yes. So if you think about it, especially with motor racing,
yeah.
It used to be tobacco. It was always Marlboro, wasn't it? And things like that.
Oh, yeah,
and it was flashed right in the side of the car. Now it's, you know, like you say, nations like Saudi Arabia, but they don't care. And like, I think they've got enough money and everything, and there's enough of a support for the sport that they can get away with it, and they do get away with it. I mean, if anybody else had cheated in their taxes to that sort of extent, they would have been put in prison for years and years. Ben Ecclestone never saw a day inside a prison, you know, and he will not, just because of who he is. Because it's the same, I suppose, with some politicians as well. Who was the Conservative one recently who had not declared money and agreed to pay a couple of million back to HMRC in order to clear off because it was a mistake. You know, you're like, fucking hell, you know, they're hounding people for like
50 quid.
Aye, you know, so it's completely different, you know, and they've agreed to pay it back because they've obviously got the money. Then that's fine. Yeah, it was a genuine mistake on the part of my accountants that they didn't move the money quickly enough that we actually get caught with it, you know. So, aye.
Do you know what it reminds me of? That, and I know it's not very PC, but it always comes back to that Little Britain sketch where David Walliams is the politician and he's standing outside the gates and he's like, and I slipped and I fell into another man. And that's what all these apologies remind me of, because it's like, you didn't forget to pay. It's like the guys at Michael Matheson, the guy that ran up like a 90 grand data bill on his iPad, and he was like, oh, my son's watched the football. you absolute shits. You've just blamed your kids
Yeah,
when you
I
were
know.
clearly, on holiday, using data that you shouldn't have used on a company, product or whatever, and blaming your kids. What an absolute shit.
Yeah, but you've got to look at it. It was 11,000. It wasn't 90,000, but it's still 11,000. But the 11,000 for that and the 60,000 or 70,000 or no, it was about 160,000 for the camper van, the SMP camper van, where you compare that to Rishi Sunak's wife not paying tax in Britain. It's running into millions, and you're thinking, we do scandals really badly. It's really, really shite scandals that we have here, and it's it's really poor.
I know it's not like Macron or something who's married to his high school teacher, and that's a bit sort of sexy. Yeah. We just have like really crap MPs that are hiding all their money.
Oh dear, oh dear.
Oh